biggest criticisms that I could levy against Friends is that it has a really inconsistent reputation among social circles. I could go to one party having Friends as an icebreaker and get a parade of drunken quotes half-remembered shouted back at me. But if I took the same icebreaker to a different party, I got labeled an NPC or a coworker, and then I cried. No one told me life was gonna be this way. I think one of the reasons that Friends can be so polarizing is because it's a really popular show. I used to think that the more people knew about a show, the easier it was to form a clear opinion on that show. But the ratio of audience to comprehension is more of a bell curve. Once everybody knows about a show, the conversations start branching out to include opinions about the general audience of a show, or how that show might compare to a show that came out after it. When I decided I wanted to do a video about Friends, I found it hard to think of a way to approach it that didn't involve thinking about one of the many different things that I've heard said about the show. I decided the best course of action was to confuse myself and watch the show out of order. I remembered feeling like Friends had pretty distinctive eras. It's not abnormal for any show to change once it's been on the air for a long time. But every time I rewatched Friends over the years, there was something about seasons 1 to 3, seasons 4 to 7, and seasons 8 to 10 that felt different to each other. To me. I wanted to be able to compare episodes from the different eras rather than seeing them in the context of the whole series. The best way that I found to do this was by focusing on episodes from different writers. Friends changed its writing room pretty consistently, with the most new writers coming in during seasons 1, 3, and 8. So I felt like I could pick a few writers out, watch only the episodes credited to them, and then get a pretty good idea of what their idea of Friends was, and then what the writer's room in general was going for. And when I did that, I saw more clearly how these three different eras took distinctive approaches to the characters and the stories. I got an idea of what a general episode by a writer would be like, and felt like I could figure out from there why a writer was picked for a certain episode based on what their strengths seemed to be. If that's confusing, then I'm just gonna watch a bunch of episodes of Friends and talk about it. Before diving into the episodes, I thought it was a good idea to establish how the Friends writers' room operated. Carice Bazaka interviewed Alexa Junge, one of the writers I'll be looking at, for Screen Australia, in an interview called Alexa Junge, Empowering Aussie Writers. In the article, Junge described being in the writer's room a lot on Friends, meaning a lot of the time the writers were working together. From what I could tell, it seems like often the episodes would be a reflection of the writer's room in general rather than the specific writer it was credited to. Junge offered that on a network comedy like Friends, you want people there to be breaking jokes and helping break episodes. Writing comedy has been aided a lot by collaborative work, because having somebody to bounce your jokes off of is good, since comedy is mainly about getting a reaction out of somebody else. Kate Lloyd's retrospective on the series for The Guardian, Friends at 30, The Inside Story, helped me flesh out that look. Adam Chase, another writer I'm looking at, told Lloyd all-nighters were common, and it often made the mood like a sleepover. Lloyd added that the creators were seeking out first-time writers in their early 20s for inspiration from their real-life experiences. The writer's room sounded like a lot of fun, but it also sounded like you had to get very intimate very quickly in order to translate your ideas into episodes of the show. Andrew Reich, another writer I'm looking at, told Lloyd about how the fan reaction was huge, and in cases like Monica and Chandler's relationship, directly affected where the writers took characters. The writers, much like the cast, were young and new to it all, and then all of a sudden they had the eyes of a huge audience. They bonded with each other and with the cast over this as they continued to fuel the show with their collective personality, which explained to me why the show felt so distinct based on who was in the writer's room, as a writer's room shakeup would surely shake up how the show was being written. This was further confirmed when I looked at Patty Lynn, a writer for season 7, and her article for Time called Writing at Friends Was No Dream Job. She described facing how the Friends writing staff was cliquey, being the only new writer as the other new hires had previously been writer's assistants on the show. Not only was the show mostly reflective of the whole group, but of the dynamic at play within that group. The process during her time on the show involved the writer's room being split into two, and then those two writer's rooms being given two different episodes to focus on. Those groups broke their stories and gave them to a writer to do their first couple of drafts before giving it back to the group to rewrite in the room line by line. So there's a chance that you could infer something about the writer based on the episode that they were chosen for, but the general story ideas and the lines at the end were all formed by committee. Lynn also described endlessly rewriting stuff that was funny the first time, having to rewrite things for the sake of the actors who saw themselves as the guardian of their characters, and having to rewrite jokes based on the studio audience's response. The scripts were endlessly pored over by the writer's room and seemingly focused on how the jokes played. I chose still to look over the episodes based on their credited writer because I wanted to see were these writers being picked because they were good at certain stories and gave good first drafts for those stories. Plus, again, it gave me a better chance to compare different eras of the show, as the writers would be appearing across multiple seasons and overlapping often. So I would be watching episodes from season 1 through episodes from season 5, and then have to go back to an episode from season 1 when I began the next writer. All that being said, Alexa Junge was a writer from season 1 to season 5. The show, while she was on board, focused heavily on early adulthood, finding relationships, finding jobs, and just in general trying to grow up in that time after college, but before you're, like, I don't know,
boring.
When you're really figuring out what it means to be an adult. In a way, this made the characters oftentimes feel young. Like you could take some of these stories and replace them in a sitcom about a high school. The first episode credited to Junge, the one with George Stephanopoulos, had Rachel, Monica, and Phoebe gossiping at a sleepover, while Ross, Chandler, and Joey went to a hockey game. What they were doing in the episode was more just a backdrop for them to talk deeper about what was happening in Ross and Rachel's lives.
I've got magic beans.
The one with the boobies saw Rachel and Chandler argue because Chandler accidentally saw her naked. The tit-for-tat solution that Rachel comes up with is hilarious because it's petty, and oftentimes that's what the show was, the characters resorting to being petty. A lot of Junge's episodes also focused heavily on the characters' relationships with their parents. Chandler confronted his mom in the one with Mrs. Bing, Joey found out his dad was cheating in the one with boobies, and Rachel had to bounce between entertaining her parents separately in the one with the two parties. The presence of their parents gave the characters something to compare themselves to, and also reminded the audience that they are still a little lost. Alexa Junge was the main writer on a couple of iconic episodes. The one with the prom video where Ross and Rachel finally get together after watching a video from their high school prom, and the one where everyone finds out, in which the characters engaged in a game of chicken with the information that Chandler and Monica are dating. Both episodes presented a funny idea and then led it to an important plot point. These episodes made me feel like the writer's room, at least during seasons 1 to 3, were mainly focused on finding the goofy moments in adult life and finding out that they actually were a lot of the time right next to the big ones. Adam Chase was a writer for around the same amount of time, from seasons 1 to 6. The episodes assigned to him always had really memorable core concepts. Episodes like the one with the monkey, the one with the giant poking device, the one with the tiny t-shirt, and the one with all the wedding dresses got their names from visual gags at the center of the episode. Despite the early seasons feeling more character-driven, it's important to note that comedy was always a focus. Chase's episodes also confirmed a lot of the things that I noticed in Junge's. There were less parents in this set, and less plots that I feel could have been directly translated to a sitcom about a high school, but for the most part, the characters were in low-stakes situations and found themselves often acting childish. The one with the fake Monica followed Monica through a series of fun adventures with her identity thief. The one with the breast milk saw the gang freak out over a bottle of breast milk. The stories and jokes centered around the characters, how they reacted to things, and what it told you about them. While you do learn a lot about them through their series arcs and big plot developments, these episodes focused mainly on showing you things about them through the smaller moments in life. Chase also wrote for a lot of Chandler and Joey subplots that started cropping up around season 2. The one where Eddie moves in focused primarily on Chandler and Joey trying to live with not living with each other. The one with the giant poking device wrapped up Chandler's relationship with Janice by having Joey find out she cheated on him and the two discussing, and the one where Chandler crosses the line was the climax of the subplot where Chandler was in love with Joey's girlfriend. These mostly interested me because they were signs that the show was starting to become more serialized outside of the Ross and Rachel stuff. These subplots are a little bit more realistic than the ones that followed, though, drawing more from established character relationships rather than chucking curveballs into the middle of characters' lives. My guess is that Chase was chosen to write some of these earlier subplots because they were testing something that they had in mind for season 3 and beyond. Andrew Reich started writing for the show in its 3rd season, and stayed until the end, though he's most heavily credited for seasons 3 to 7. Hey, this is Editing William here. I somehow missed that Andrew Reich had a writing partner, Ted Cohen, who is credited on all the same episodes as him. I think that maybe I got confused because a lot of the Friends writers had writing partners when they started and slowly got more episodes to themselves as they went along, but that's not the case here. Ted Cohen, I throw myself at your feet. To the rest of you, you'll see a little co-writing credit for Ted Cohen, and if there's a spot where I couldn't fit it, understand that Andrew Reich was working with Ted Cohen. I should have credited them as a duo. Beginning in the 3rd season, his first one writing for the show, the series drifted away from the more realistic adult coming-of-age story, which made sense. It had become pretty evident at this point that the show was going to be around for a while, and the characters couldn't just keep realizing that being an adult was hard over and over again well into their 30s. Instead, episodes credited to Reich focus in on the potential of the subplots. The one with Ross's things had the group goof off in Monica's rich boyfriend, Jon Favreau's apartment. The one with all the rugby had a story about Ross and his new girlfriend Emily meeting exes of hers. And the one with Ross's sandwich was all about how Chandler and Monica's new relationship was affecting Joey, who had to keep it a secret.
He has a naked picture of Monica, he takes naked pictures of us, then he eats chicken, and then he looks at them.
In contrast to the more episodic, earlier episodes, a lot of the episodes that Reich was assigned were more driven by at least one plot that tied into the overall story. Another perfectly sensible move, as by season 3 the subplots were also multiplying. Another interesting thing I found in the episodes credited to Reich were how Joey was focused on heavily throughout them. My vague recollection of Joey's character was that he started out just like a normal guy and then became a caricature by the end. I didn't think there was any in-between phase. I was happy to be proven wrong with episodes like the one with the ballroom dancing, where Joey taught the landlord to dance and learned to like it himself. The one with all the rugby where he coached Ross, or the one with Joey's new brain, which saw Joey fall for an older actress he was going to replace. They're Joey-centered episodes that find new ways to explore his character rather than relying on the classic he's a womanizer and he's dumb. Though there's also plenty of that. Don't you worry, we have dumb womanizers for days around here. Not in my house. Joey also got mixed into different pairings that would reoccur, with Ross and Joey getting paired up in the one with all the rugby, the one with Rachel's inadvertent kiss, and the one with the proposal, and Rachel and Joey getting paired in the one with the ballroom dancing, the one with Rachel's book, and the one with the soap opera party. If you're familiar with Friends, you might see where I'm going with this. Reich was given a lot of episodes that had to incorporate Joey into the main story, show something new about him, or pair him up with Ross or Rachel. When Reich was brought on the show was kind of wrapping up a lot of the Ross and Rachel stuff for a while. Although a lot of seasons 3 and 4 still focused heavily on the pairing. Once Chandler and Monica were received very well by the audience in season 4, they let that pairing take the spotlight for seasons 5 and 6. But they were already prepping Joey in a lot of episodes to be able to take over a story like that, and so when it came time to shake things up again, they turned to Joey. They seemed at this point to trust Reich a lot with the character, as he wrote the one where Joey tells Rachel, which concluded the plot point where Joey has a crush on Rachel, at least for a while. The one with the soap opera party, which escalated the storyline where Rachel had a crush on Joey to a love square, and the one after Joey and Rachel kiss, where Joey and Rachel finally decide to be together. The Joey-Rachel storyline has been received pretty poorly over the years, but watching specifically the episodes credited to Reich gave me a lot of good Joey moments within that subplot. He took his rejection really well. He got to have a subplot where he had been tricking the whole group for years, which is basically the opposite of the Joey is dumb thing. And he got a storyline over him struggling to be a good friend to Ross right when he's gotten to be with Rachel. Reich understood Joey well, and seemingly understood all the characters well enough to navigate them through increasingly wide wild storylines. You can't tell me that someone credited with the episode where Ross tried to kiss his cousin is not somebody who understands Ross deeply. Shayna Goldberg-Meehan was also added in season 3 and stayed through the end of the show, though her episodes were more evenly spread throughout the seasons. She added evidence to my assumption that the subplots from seasons 3 to 7 were the big focus for the writer's room, because during her first batch of episodes, again, at least one subplot was focused on in each episode. She's credited with the one with the ski trip, which saw the group fall out over Ross and Rachel's breakup. The one with the dirty girl was about Chandler trying to help Joey find a present for the girlfriend Chandler was secretly in love with. And the one where Ross hugs Rachel centered around Chandler and Monica moving in together and saying goodbye to Joey and Rachel. The subplots were now what was being used to show different sides of the characters, rather than the more episodic problems of the early seasons. The consistent drive for the writer's room seemed to be the characters and bringing out the best in them. It also seemed like the writers could be assigned based on their strengths with specific characters, as Meehan gets a lot of episodes that focus heavily on Rachel. The one with Rachel's crush introduced an ongoing love interest for Rachel, the one with the inappropriate sister wrapped up a different ongoing love interest, and the one where Ross hugs Rachel was about both Rachel and Monica and Rachel and Ross. It would also explain why Meehan wrote a lot more for the later seasons, as Rachel takes a lot of the subplots in the later seasons with her baby and her crush on Joey. However, the 8th season of the show started focusing a lot less on the subplots as it went through its second big shakeup in the writer's room. Meehan's episodes started to change with the show, becoming more episodic and focused on humor. The one with all the cheesecakes saw Rachel and Chandler become cheesecake thieves, the one with the rumor had Brad Pitt show up to announce how much he hated Rachel, and the one where Rachel is late just spent an entire episode not wrapping up a plot point as Rachel became more and more frustrated. While they all still find a way to give a character a good moment or a good side, I think at this point the audience mostly knew the characters, and the writers felt comfortable just letting them react to different situations. The bigger stories started happening more in the background, as characters became more confident to handle their big problems without need for a big story. The final writing duo of Sherry Bilson Graham and Ellen Plummer began writing for the show in season 6, and continued through the 10th season. Their first credited episode, the one where Phoebe runs, saw Phoebe run in an absurd way. Chandler and Ross cower in the face of Monica's neatness, and Joey find it hard not to hit on his new roommate. The new roommate was a subplot and would continue on for a couple more episodes, but it was starting to focus more on making jokes out of the situations rather than putting the characters through something important. Oftentimes, the episodes would focus in on a single trait of a character and let that trait guide a lot of the jokes. While you might worry about simplifying a characters and doing a flanderization, as I've talked about before, you don't really have to here. And honestly, you don't have to in Scrubs either, the video that I was talking about. Here, we'll do this real quick. Both for Scrubs and for Friends, the flanderization of characters, the focusing in on a single trait, is a great service to the comedy of the show. By not having to be as complex with the characters, you allow a lot more room for things to be funny in your comedy show. Sometimes it can work to the show's benefit if their characters are flanderized during a period where the characters wouldn't really be going through any big changes. The stories are supposed to be low stakes, the characters are supposed to just react in a way you think they would, and the absurdity of the characters is what's funny. Well, part of what's funny. I don't know, I'm not a comedy scientist. Their episodes employed the characters similarly in the one with Joey's award, where Joey falsely accepted an award after being upset he didn't win one, while Ross was tricked by a student who said he was in love with him. A lot of the episodes that went to Graham and Plummer seemed to be the ones where the characters needed to be fairly rigid in their characterization in order for the jokes to work. These being their particular strengths before season 8 of the show, it was interesting to find out that their first subplot was in season 8 of the show, in the one where Joey dates Rachel. In it, Joey took Rachel on a date to make her feel better while she was pregnant, finding out in the process he has a crush on her. Like I said, it was one of the most awkward romantic subplots on the show, but this episode almost made it seem plausible. This might have been good because the writing duo was good at letting characters shine through big stories. The idea of Joey taking Rachel on a date alone is an interesting premise, but framing it with the idea of Joey's womanizing tendencies being on full display through the date he has planned otherwise reveal a different side to Joey when he realizes that the actual date wasn't as fulfilling. The plot doesn't introduce the complexity, it's the fact that the character is being different from a really well-established character trait. Further evidence for that came in The One Where No One Proposes, where the plot of Rachel accidentally accepting a proposal Joey didn't mean to make was fueled by the fact Rachel was worried about a new phase of life. Ross was so jumbled he couldn't remember if he proposed, and Joey kept stumbling into making the situation worse. What could have been a very easy misunderstanding was fueled by the characters acting in so stereotypical a way for their character. And the writer's room seemed mostly focused on finding funny character moments now, which might have added to why the Joey-Rachel subplot felt so weird. Beyond it being a completely platonic friendship that felt like it was forced into a romantic subplot, it was during a season where the character drama in general just wasn't the focus. Remembering the subplot always made me think of another episode by Graham and Plummer, the one where Ross is fine. Though there's another episode after it about Joey and Rachel, I always thought of this one as the grand finale to the subplot, just based on Ross's reaction to the whole thing.
It's weird. The only thing weird would be if someone didn't like Mexican food because I'm making fajitas!
Everything was worth this performance by David Schwimmer. The situation had felt like such an awkward moment waiting to happen that when it finally happened, they really delivered on the awkward. The whole thing didn't need anybody to change or grow or be complex, which often was a given in the older stories. The characters just needed to be who they were, and the hilarious consequences would suffice. I would also say when I think about the final seasons in general, my head goes to the duos, the one where Joey speaks French, which was Joey at his most exaggeratedly stupid trying to learn French. I think about this scene all the time, and it's not because I'm thinking about, oh, of course, Joey's stupid like he always is. It's because of what he's specifically doing as a result of them sticking to the fact that he is hilariously stupid.
You're not speaking French!
The show went out trying to get its laughs, and I think it succeeded. So, as far as I can tell, Friends was trying to be 3 different things across its tenure. In its first 3 seasons, it sought to explore the general feelings and anxieties of 20-somethings through memorable episodic stories. As it continued and its characters were more established, the writers started branching out on subplots and allowing the audience to see different sides of these established characters, and also give them a chance to each face something new. But by the end, the characters were settling, and the writer's room decided to let them settle. So for seasons 8 through 10, they focused on the comedy and giving each character a good laughable moment, while still going all in on trying to make you cry in the finale. But all these shifts in the series make sense given that the writers were attuned to what the audience and actors were thinking about the stories. And knowing all that, I thought the writer's room managed its job pretty well. The show never stopped feeling like itself, probably because of the guiding hand of head writers Marta Kaufman and David Crane, mixed with the protectiveness the cast felt over their characters, mixed with the general accomplishments of the people on the crew in designing a very iconic look for Friends. But also, the consistency can be credited to each distinctive writer's room and their continual focus on character throughout the series. Again, it's hard to draw individual conclusions about any of these writers based solely on their time on Friends, because it was a very collaborative show. They were all obviously very talented because they were on the show, and I also do feel like I saw a through line in the stories they were being given. It always seemed to reflect what the show was trying to make itself. If somebody out there wants to make a sitcom and decided to take anything from Friends, I would take the character work that the writers on the show were so good at writing. Plus, that's what How I Met Your Mother did, and it worked for them.